Know Thyself is dedicated to the exploration of the most rewarding task an individual can ever embark on, the journey to find oneself. Our intention is to investigate the universal principles that have equipped our species to seek the treasure of all treasures, self-knowledge. With your host, Daniel Powinski and Eduardo Manteca, this is the Know Thyself podcast. Doesn't matter. I just wanted to make sure the audio levels are good.
Check. Yeah.
Welcome to the Know Thyself podcast. I'm here with Daniel.
Hello.
I'm Eduardo. And hey, man, it really is good to see you, though. Daniel and I both ended up doing a little bit of traveling, and within that time, we kind of rearranged a little bit of things that we'll be talking about today with the podcast, and we incorporated an episode, which was Lord of the Rings, while we were away. Daniel was in California, hanging out on the beach.
Surfing the USA.
And I was in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, we're back now, and I'm really excited to continue our journey through Genesis. And Daniel and I were talking before the podcast, as we normally do, about, this being such a broad topic. And I know we've said this over and over, so sorry if I keep repeating myself. But for any listener out there, we're just going to assume that you don't know all the verses of the Bible, or, we can assume that you probably do. But I want to make sure, I told Daniel to kind of reintroduce, our purpose every time that we get back on Genesis, because so much of what we're going to keep talking about and introducing through the second season will obviously be about, the story of creation and going on with Genesis, and with the Bible and what the Bible has to say about it, and the breakdown of each line that we're going to be introducing throughout these episodes. So that way, just hang on tight. I know that before we organize things a certain way, but with this one being such a large topic, Dale and I just agreed, let's just kind of let them know what line we're at right now, what verse we're talking about, what we're really introducing, so that way we're all on the same timeline. And right away, I'm just gonna get right into it. So if you haven't been listening, where we've been having these discussions about, as far as in a timeline with regards to the first verse and the first few verses, is in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and we'll stop there.
Right.
Okay. So that's where we're at. So when we're discussing about, these topics regarding Genesis, it's not just all of Genesis as a whole yet. We're just making our way. And I know we've said that before.
Right.
So
yeah, no. And I think that's a great little, we have this amazing resource of the Bible to be this roadmap of this discussion. Mm-hmm. So I think when we were before this episode, we were like, we're really not utilizing this roadmap that has been blessed upon us, right? With the chapters in the books, making it so organized. So we said we just have to be more like priestly and pastorally. So we're just going to start yelling Bible verses at you. But it totally helps. So cool, it will kind of help pull down the whole conversation, because really that first two verses, that in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth, that's really what we've covered this second season so far. So that's kind of everything we've looked at with our kind of deeper discussion of time, the aspect of I am, and these beginning aspects of just how do we even approach creation. That's all was included in that first verse.
Right.
So really excited. We're going to kind of keep making our way, but it's one of the things, these are such a vast amount of information in this text, in this, limited text that we were given with Genesis, that it's really just endless. So we'll really never be able to get away from those conversations. And we'll still kind of, pepper them back in as we kind of continue this journey down. But again, Genesis is going to be something that you want to approach multiple times in your life, from different angles and different perspectives. And it's always going to kind of bear different fruit that you need to put your attention to. So, this is kind of an exciting aspect, though, to get into, because one of the things that we are going to be approaching is, again, just how much is actually carried within these few words that were transcribed for Genesis, right? So again, remember we talked about this creation story is kind of an abridged creation story compared to older mythologies.
Right.
So we kind of have a limited one compared to like Hinduism and some of the older religions. So this one definitely is what you would call almost this abridged version. So there's a lot that, if we're not looking at world religions and world scriptures, can be almost lost, and you can almost read through the idea of the earth was without void. And you can kind of just blow through that line, but that's actually really, really important. And that's going to become really, really important into the aspect of understanding why we need to understand Genesis for ourselves. But two, we're really about to start to see the power of the feminine energy, and really just kind of the context of what is at play here. And we're going to kind of start to see some of these astrological powers that we spoke about in the past that on the surface you won't really kind of recognize in the Bible, but they very much are there. And we kind of spoke about them a little bit last time with the Elohim, and we kind of jumped a little bit forward, but that's what we're going to be kind of talking about with this this void, this void. Formless void of the earth at this point, and kind of what it represents.
And does it represent the void of even just those planetary energies?
This is almost the first emanation of God, is just this pure consciousness. So everything within consciousness is withheld in this first emanation. And it's not so much this explosion. It's always kind of explained as like this driftless cloud. Okay. And so now we're talking about the creation of the universe. So this driftless cloud could have been for eons.
Right.
Okay. And so again, when we're talking about Genesis, this is an exercise in imagination and creativity. And the only way we're going to be able to actually connect with the true essence of this story is to really activate that imagination and creativity, because you're going through a ritual when you're reading this, and it's taking you through the ritual of not only the creation of the universe, but also the creation of yourself. And so what we're seeing with this void is this could be eons of time, right? And then these old spiritual books talk about this myth that comes over, and this almost like dust, dry wind that almost circums life itself. Okay. And this is actually the introduction of Saturn. Okay. And it's so quickly just overlooked in the Bible. But what this is it's really kind of like that sacred, formless mother energy. Mm-hmm. That's the first emanation of God. And then the second emanation of God is going to be this pure materialistic limitation, almost death materialistic aspect of Saturn. And that's almost going to extinguish that light of creativity, of light of consciousness. Okay. And again, we're talking about eons of time here, right? So what we're almost looking at, this would be probably a really traumatic event, because this is happening in the entire universe, right? So this is what mythologies are written about. And this is why it has to be such an imagination exercise, because we can't even fathom in our minds how big the universe is.
Right.
But imagine this play happening throughout all. So we kind of have this extinction of this first duality between almost the mother and father time. Okay. And we're going to really kind of start to see where this creation is going to come from. And then what we're going to see is these other emanations kind of making themselves available. And that's going to be kind of the evolution of what's going to create the soul. And then we're going to have the bursting of that sunlight. Let there be light. And that's really going to be the almost principal aspect of light overcoming the darkness of materialism. Right. Okay. Because it comes without that help of that light of this new savior, the new son of the world, the mother was going to get extinguished by the father Saturn. Right. Because he wants to make everything cold and lifeless, and she's pure life. Okay. So where we're going to kind of see it is this emanation of this sunlight, and that's the light of life kind of coming through and almost making this dawn for creation to actually happen. Okay. Because that's one of the things that's so specific about creation is everything has to be so perfect.
Right.
You know, like the sun has to be in the correct distance away from the earth, no further, no far. You know, the earth has to be, the correct distance away from the sun, no further, no closer. The sun has to be in its correct, phase of life, because if it was in too early of a phase of life, it would be too hot and we wouldn't even have life on earth. Right.
Exactly.
So we're going to really start to see this balance come together of these astrological signatures making itself very apparent in the beginning with the mother versus the father energies. And then we're going to see these other players start to make themselves few. And this is going to really represent the Elohim. So why this is so important and why we really have to kind of think about Genesis in terms of Saturn and restrictions is because Genesis is Saturn's telling of creation. It's much different than the visions of St. John, which is going to come with the John vision, which gives
the Torah, right? I mean,
right. Wait, well, the Torah is going to be the same. That's going to be the Genesis version. So that would be the Torah's creation story will be Genesis, right?
Right.
So when John's kind of comes around, it gives us a little bit more, not so much depthness, but there's a little bit more beauty to it. It's less restrictions. It's less kind of cold, right? This is why, again, like people look at God as this like, this judgmental being, and that's what they kind of judge it as, but they're really just looking at the God from Genesis,
right?
Which we're going to kind of get into, isn't really the true God. This is Saturn. This is why he's jealous. This is why he goes through these aspects. So we're really going to start to see that these biblical stories are, again, galactically overcoming these astrological energies and inverting them to alchemical gold. But not only on the galactic external world, like universally speaking, also internally, it's going to be taking these astrological energies, like the Saturn energy. And how do we not become so leadened that we lose the light of life, right? And how do we balance that? Because we still need to live within the parameters of Saturn, right? So we're starting to see other topics that we've kind of discussed, but this understanding of this formless void that's going to almost be overtaken and almost extinguished. And again, that's why this whole internal light of the sacred feminine is more of this like essence that kind of comes within. It's not this bright light of like the sun, the savior. That's more of taking that mother energy and bringing out into the light of day.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I think, sorry, to make a quick correction about what I meant in the distinction between the Torah or with the Torah is that I know that in Hebrew, I mean, the way it's translated to as far as what I've read is that this void we're talking about, like they don't believe it to be nothing before that either. I know that in the Bible it does say, and this is in the beginning, but I've heard it before. I don't remember what lecture this was that I was listening to, but this rabbi was talking about how like in Judaism they don't believe that void that was not before was there was nothing at all. Where there are other versions in the Bible where they believe like, no, there was nothing before that and then it started. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no. And so when you're talking about this sort of like aimless or drifting wave, I think like that's something that they've already accepted from way before, the Bible, as far as how the King James Version presents it. It's like, oh, there was nothing and then it started. And it's like, I don't know if that's completely true. And I've just heard it again from this one lecture, and I can't remember the name of the rabbi, but he was saying that. He's like, well, no. He's like, actually, there was, but what that was is what we're kind of sort of breaking down along with the energies that come from that very first,
emanation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, in the beginning does not mean, it means in the beginning of, this universe,
right?
In the beginning of us, because obviously the creation energy is above the time-space continuum. You know what I mean? So I think that's, again, Judaism has a deeper understanding of the Old Testament than most Christian. Now that's the case for everyone, but there's a deep essence that comes from knowing the language of the sacred scripture. Right. And being able to get it from source material. So,
which is what I love to be able to talk about this openly as a discussion with you, because that's what we're doing. We're just breaking down what, say, in modern Christianity may just kind of look over very quickly, or just give you not enough clues to what the definition of what this void may be, or what wasn't, clear to a lot of people may, already have been introduced or have an understanding of that in scriptures. Like in Judaism, they're like, wait a minute, don't just lump us all together here. We kind of have a deeper understanding of what's really going on here. And and that's what this is all about, is just kind of finding those esoteric understandings amongst all of these verses that we're going to cover.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's really important because we're going to decide to see this original duality, and we're going to see twos obviously play a huge aspect. So we're going to see kind of the separation from darkness into light. And that's really going to kind of help distinguish between spirit and matter. And again, just this creation of this material universe and how perfect everything has to be, and just how, important Saturn is, but when Saturn's strength comes too much, it's going to kind of squeeze out the life. So this is really, we're going to start to see, like, from this emanation and through this 7 days creation, we're going to start to see the creation of these other planets like Jupiter, Mercury, because these are the Elohim. Mm-hmm. These are the powers left be to help kind of organize what the creator kind of has in mind for consciousness. Right? This is kind of that emanation, not his mind, what its mind, to kind of do that. So, yeah, it's really just this introduction of almost the prince of this world. And this kind of helps connect us to Lord of the Rings, because we're really getting introduced to Father Time here. And again, this is why I think so many people have a fearful look at the Bible, because the first expression we meet of God is a tyrannical kind of father, who sets limits, who restricts. But without this, we would not be able to go on the journey to make it back into Eden, because we need this construct, right? I mean, again, we can kind of go back to the whole episode on Saturn to kind of see what this makeup is of this. But we're really going to start to see this, what Greek mythology is and what Greek mythology was talking about when the clash of these titans. These are talking about these huge universal events that physically shaped the universe. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're talking over eons and eons of time. So again, as we start to approach the 7 days of creation, at no point do we want to think of those as like a 24-hour day. You know what I mean?
Right. Because I'm glad that you clarified that. Yeah.
Right. And that's something that's really important. Just like when we look at our own 7 days of creation to become self-conscious humans, we know it didn't last 7 days. Like we dropped down and then we started off as like a single-celled organism, right, and but that was our 7 days of creation. We'll kind of get to that, but that's what we're going to kind of look at. But the thing that we really need to understand too is, like, the only way for us to grasp Genesis is to truly, grasp who we are. And that's going to be really important, because what we're seeing in Genesis is not only the creation of the universe, but the creation of ourselves. And we partake in that universe. Mm-hmm. So again, this is just going to fall on deaf ears if we don't really fully embrace that this Bible is a mirror of you. Right. And this is your story. And this story's playing out. But it's not going to get to the limits it needs to. It's never going to be able to reach that Sabbath, that seventh day, where you can actually incorporate this spiritually, until you actually begin to believe that you partake in creation and you are part of the creator, right? It's a fun exercise to do with yourself, but you can get really serious, if you, in the morning sometimes, I'll be getting ready and I'll be getting really serious, be like, do you want to meet God? And then you just look over in the mirror really quick and smile at yourself, because that's it. You know what I mean? You could do this to somebody else too. You can be if somebody's ever having a tough day, or even they're just you're having shenanigans with them, and you want to just make them kind of connect spiritually and have a good laugh. You could do it with a mirror. Do you want to meet God? And then slowly move that mirror to their face. Right. It's a good little exercise. But even if you don't have a mirror, you can point at any object and say the same thing. Do you want to meet God? And you could just point at any object. And if there's no objects, you can literally just take your hand and wave it in the empty space and say the same exact thing. Do you want to meet God? Right? And that's the aspect that we really need to start to incorporate. And this leap of faith we're not going to go anywhere in this biblical study if we stay in this limited, low ego, it's me against the world. Right. This is all roses and berries, but it really doesn't have any application to my life. This book is just going to fall on deaf ears, because it doesn't work that way. This book requires belief. And the belief only comes in the beginning, because once you start putting the principles that are encoded in this and other holy scriptures, you see that it's a complete deep principle of the universe. And this is almost like an equation. Yeah. And these stories work like an equation. And, if you input love and you input truth, you're going to get light and, you know, everything you want out of that peace and prosperity. If you put fear and hate, you're going to get a different outcome. So it's everything's just like this mathematical formula. But really just understanding again that this Bible is acting like a mirror, and we really need to start to approach this story with the responsibility of who we really are.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
You know?
And I love that the way you put that was great, because I do always go back to the idea of patterns and vibrations, and actually a lot of the things we've even covered in the first season can all be applied from here on out within the story of creation to how we navigate and how we bring things to the forefront, how manifestation actually exists, all with the same energy, which is having faith in that the microcosm and the macrocosm are working in conjunction, and a grain of salt or ourselves and our cellular structures all coexist as one energy, but that one energy being from God. Mm-hmm. And the Bible will explain that, but it also will go over it in different books, and it'll talk about or in different verses it'll talk about that relation. But I feel like it is kind of important to know that it's a story about you. Once you know that about you, you can know more about the world, because the world is within you, since it's all within God. And it's just something that I think people won't experience until they have like a near-death experience, or until they have something of tragedy, which we talk about in, again, the first season. We talk about, you know, the hero's journey, and a lot of the great things that you brought up in the podcast before this episode with Lord of the Rings has a lot to do with that, finding out what's happening to you inside, but it's also happening in this, you know, in the above as much as it's happening in the below. And so I really like the way you just kind of put that all together as a reminder of how it's happening, and how that you have to take that leap of faith in order to like see God in you and see it in everything else, including just thin air, and just pointing at it and saying like, this is God, you know?
This is it. Yeah.
So.
No, man, 100%. So yeah, and I think just the whole idea of the kind of tap into with our discussion on time, kind of the point that I'm really trying to almost reiterate in that moment of that mirror exercise to do, is to really just to embrace this idea of creation, to embrace this idea of our connection with creation, and the idea of God living through us in the moment. And that light that shines through, which is our consciousness, can only be grasped in the present moment. And this is God. It's right now in this very second. You're experiencing this creative force, this creative energy that is eternal. And it's the thought process beyond the thought process. And really just bearing witness to this whole human experience through Genesis is going to be really vital. Just grasping everything that's being presented in this document.
Right. No, and just like the 7 days of creation, and I know we're going to go into that later on, but I love that you're already bringing up the first, and the first being light, and having that understanding of where that light comes from is important to not just like go on to the next day, you know, and then the day after that, and we'll do this in order as we're going and unfolding this. So I really do. I hear what you're saying. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. No, and it's so exciting too, because you know we're starting to approach really the feminine mysteries that is going to really blossom with the speaking of the Gnostic movement and early Christianity, as well as Sophia. Sophia is kind of this mother energy, and she really almost becomes a sacrifice in the Gnostic Gospels. But this idea is there of this overcoming of this Saturn energy, trying to extinguish really life out, right? And why this is so important, why I think Genesis was one of the books we started with, is because in this Kali Yuga that we find ourselves in, and to reconnect it with this time, Genesis is ruled by Saturn. This Kali Yuga is very much ruled by Saturn, because this is the coming back and the pulling back in of everything. And understanding the beginning through this lens is going to give us a better understanding of how to maneuver the various steps that we're going to be faced with in these next couple thousand years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So So I just think that's such an important aspect to kind of start bringing in. And this is great too, because with these, as we kind of move from the step and the introduction of the mother and Saturn and these various planets, we're going to not only see the introduction of astrology into this, because we've already been kind of looking at the Hebrew language, but the zodiac is going to start to play a really, really big part in this Genesis story, and as well as every other part of the Bible.
Question. So as this feminine energy comes in, you're saying this mother energy comes in. Do you see that that's like the opposition to like father time, like Kronos eating its children, and like it comes after that, where it's like this? I'm asking. I don't know.
So really, what this this feminine energy, this first emanation, isn't really the counter, because it has all of it within it. It has the pain. And so this is going to be, the second and third emanations are going to be more control of that prima materia. This is the prima materia. This is that first essence. Okay. So now the will of the individual is what's going to blow that cosmic dust, whether towards the light or towards the material realm. Right. So this is, again, that's a great question, man, because this is that yin energy. Yin is constricted and formed by that yang masculine energy. So it's going to be really kind of that story of the Savior, the young Apollo, the Horus, the Jesus that's going to come. That's really going to kind of almost come to make peace with the Father, because the one that really battles the Father is going to be Jupiter. And we're going to see that through the story of Hercules. We're going to see that through the story of Thor. That's the one that I would say really takes up arms, and that's the other Titan. So when we kind of start breaking down mythology, but this mother energy, this is just like that. This is just the prima materia. This is the first emanation of God. This is the complete emanation. This is the perfectness that we were in before we all fell. So that essence that we're trying to get back up to, this is what we were kind of in. And it's really almost described almost like this web, right? That web of this energy that we were within is what we fell to start this process of climbing up that ladder to becoming self-conscious. Okay, so it's kind of the same kind of thing. It's the physical world's going to have its own fall into matter, and it's going to make its own evolution, because again, as above, so below. So the universe has a soul, I have a soul, we both have to go through evolution, right? We're just in different levels of evolution.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's what it's all about. And this is what the ancients used to base everything off of, which was as exciting, because this was a brain gasp of mine a little earlier. But the ancients really argued about the idea of consciousness. When we think about Genesis, this whole universe is based off of consciousness and serving consciousness.
Right.
So this is why life serves life, and lower forms of life always give to higher forms of consciousness. And this is what the whole aspect is about. So when we look at the beginning of the universe, it's very interesting how material science comes up with like a Big Bang theory, but they really don't want to talk about anything that became before the Big Bang. Right.
Which was a priest, right? Wasn't that a priest that came up with the Big Bang theory?
Well, yeah. And it's like, it's kind of gotten caught on, and there's aspects to it, but the thing is they don't ever talk about like what came before, right?
Right.
And they also
exactly
argue about, was all matter created at once? Is matter still being created? Right. There's a lot of arguing that goes on in that own camp.
Yep.
Now, when you get to the ancient camp of cosmology and the ancient creation of the universe, all the camps are pretty unified, which is amazing, because we can't even, as a whole camp of unity, agree on a form of measurement, right? We have two different forms of measurements on different continents. Something so simple like measurement, we can't agree on what we think is the best, but all ancient schools have almost the same understanding of creation and the energy that was before creation. And that energy and that creation is thought orientated.
Right.
So it's a mind before matter universe, where materialism thinks it's matter before mind. But in a mind before matter universe, the thing we have to so much think about, and I would say this is the biggest theme of today when I was talking about understanding Genesis, is this idea that consciousness is the most important thing in the universe, and everything is serving consciousness. So the way to serve the universe is by the expansion of your consciousness and the expansion of every other living thing's consciousness, and every aspect of life every object has consciousness. Like even plastic, as gross as it is and as dead as it is, there's still some sort of consciousness in there that is not completely manufactured, right? There's something that's holding that together. Now you can like feel a tree and you can feel its consciousness. You can see, how plants kind of ebb and flow. You can definitely see consciousness in animals, but we live in this hierarchy of, everything serving the consciousness above it kind of thing. And that's what this Genesis is really kind of asking you to partake in,
Right.
to accept the responsibility now that you in this kingdom that you find yourself in this Lord of the Rings, this Saturn's kingdom, you are the highest form of consciousness.
Right.
What are you going to do? Are you going to stay here or are you going to make your way out? But it's up to you, right?
Right.
But if you really serve in consciousness, you have to keep climbing that ladder, right? It's a pull up. And that's what this whole aspect is. It's really just, are you ready to make that next step? Because that's all humanity is. It's that first step of being self-conscious of yourself. So it's the next level that's kind of pulling you up. But we have to understand the importance of consciousness. And like every decision you make is made in the direction for the expansion of consciousness.
Absolutely.
And that's the best way that's the only way to serve the universe and to serve each other, always making those decisions. And again, I think you can't really start thinking about that mindset until you really understand what Genesis is trying to tell us.
Right.
Right.
And I like that you bring up how that was a unified idea in ancient times. Like I know that it's said even by Manly P. Hall, and the Egyptians would describe about how the gods impregnated space with themselves. Mm-hmm. So to serve God would be to understand how to get back to that space of what you already created out of, and basically elevate yourself to that highest level of consciousness throughout the time of your physical life here, and beyond that, to make it back to what already was as one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
100%. I always think that that's one of the things in regards to the 7 days of creation, or in the beginning, in the first verses of Genesis, that you have to put the brakes on and just go, okay, hold on, let's really have a discussion about what these first phrases really are describing. Because again, as we keep talking about, this is the story of yourself. It's important to know how many cultures across time and religions across time have honored that idea, where it's like it's more than just the way it's presented in this version of the Bible right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, it's just such a important time for biblical study and to be looking at this book with everything that's happening, and especially with the aspect of, I think a lot of people feel like they've lost power. And probably in these last year, maybe 2 years, they probably felt like, even their ability to manifest compared to like what's happening in their environment around them. I'm sure there has been kind of some struggles. So this is just a great refresher as well into, how do we pull into that environment that's going to harbor that growth and, really kind of nourish that development of that conscious expansion. But really just making that deep, deep commitment to yourself.
Right.
And to really see in yourself, the highest self, and not seeing those two apart from each other. And that's, again, it's a very difficult process, but this is the one thing that you're not supposed to know. Like, you're not supposed to know that you are partaking in creation. You are a creator. Right. And that's the one thing you don't want to know. And it's, again, we talk about how the amnesia that comes from it, and how easy it is to forget this with just a little bit of stress in life. You completely forget that you are, a child of creation.
Right.
And it just like quickly goes out the window, and you just become me, and you buy into all your stresses, you buy into all your ups and your downs and everything like that. And you get very attached to this aspect. So again, I think this Genesis really does a great way of us kind of even approaching what it really means by like non-attachment, and like how we position ourselves in creation to not only understand and evaluate what's happening to us, but to put the best foot forward so the best can happen to all of us.
Oh, that's really
Right.
well said. I really like how you said that, man. Yeah, I mean, I know I read here that in the Tibetan creation story, it's important to have that time to meditate in order to go within and actually connect to that source in order to understand where creation even began and how your story isn't over, or it's continuously unfolding. And then within the 5 cent construct, that's a complete distraction all the time for us. If we had no way of having this understanding of what these stressors are in our life, because we're holding them to a higher regard than the spiritual side of our life that we can't see. The only time that people kind of make a distinction between the two is when their life is threatened, when their physical world has been shifted, which is what's happened in the last 2 years. This is the time to sort of reap from if you feel some kind of void or this hollowness inside, this is why you do go and you meditate. It's not so much just because they say it's good for you or he or she says it's good for you. It's good for you because you're just going within and connecting to source one more time. And again, it is rough that we have to go through a patch that has us very shook up in order to connect back to that. But again, if you didn't have something beyond our 5 cent construct move around you and make you feel a certain way, you wouldn't go looking for it in the first place. You know what I mean? You just kind of be reacting to everything coming at you, which is what's happening in our society right now. Is our dopamine receptors are just completely slaves to constant distraction and pleasure. And so with having all that in abundance, it's hard to go within and have that connection. So again, the Bible is telling you this right here in this opening story of creation, like what it really means to sort of have this understanding and where that light comes from, Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what I really love too about this introduction of this Elohim and these emanations, and we were kind of talking about that desire energy last week. We can kind of see almost the movement of desire energy too, because like, just think about that mother, this first emanation, this prima materia, how it just says it kind of hovers on the surface. Very much how you kind of have to uncover spiritual knowledge, where more of like your instinct for rage and greed and jealousy comes over you in like a hot, dry flash, kind of how Saturn's kind of described, right? And so we're going to kind of see as these planets kind of make themselves up, you can actually see how these emanations rise up in you, and they kind of hit you differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because usually if it's a spiritual breakthrough that you're happening, there's some kind of Mercury that's getting your attention to be like, because that spiritual energy is always within you. There's some way Mercury's getting that connection to be like, you need to pay attention to this right now.
Right.
Where like a Saturn greed can almost, like we say, almost like hijack Mercury to be like, oh, this is all you can think about. Jealousy, this is all you can think about. Like that Mars can kind of pull in there too. So again, when we kind of think about these planets and we're going to see kind of, the makeup of these, what's going to happen, and even to the aspect of the the rebellions that are going to happen, and the aspects of this, it's all going to make itself apparent through these emanations of that, from that prima material and everything that kind of comes from it. So again, it's just about getting back to that pure first emanation, which is almost that philosopher's stone, which we were working through the entire alchemical process.
Yeah.
So again, just reading this Genesis with the Hebrew, the alchemical, the zodiac, it's just, you never will see a modern individual could not write a spiritual text like this from any of the ancient civilizations. Like, we don't have the capacity to do something like this. And that's what really makes these books and these holy books so sacred and special, because they can hold in so many subjects.
Right.
And it's analogies to everything. Yeah. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. No, and I'm really glad that the first season we covered a lot of, we covered a lot of ground, obviously, from principles to then even just like the esoteric meaning behind just planetary energies, and here it all kind of unfolds within Genesis. And so hopefully there'll be that correlation on and on throughout. us breaking down Genesis. And one thing I also wanted to ask you about regarding like the breakdown from different origins and understandings from other individuals, like the Gnostics, I know also talk about having the idea of that power within you given to you by the power itself. So that way you know how to emanate you have like a blueprint of how to sort of bring that to your own world. So you already have a direct connection to source from the very day you're here. You have these gifts that know how to plug into this world and unfold these godlike powers that we all have. How do I say this? Not as an easier way of understanding the natural world, but on a way that kind of already sets you on the right foot. And I just wanted to know more about that with the Gnostics. I mean, I know that you kind of brought that up a little bit. I know we're going to bring up the Gnostics, you said, throughout the second season. I know we'll probably end with that, but is there something you want to add to that with with Gnosticism and that idea of seeing that reflection of God within ourselves and putting it to work? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm really asking the right question.
You're killing it, man, because all Gnostics is gnosis, which is knowledge in Greek, right? So this is firsthand account knowledge of the Supreme. So that's exactly what you're dealing with, and that's exactly what the Gnostics were. So the Gnostics are going to be branched out right around kind of the creative Catholicism. We spoke about it a little bit before. Catholicism is more St. Peter. Gnosticism is going to be more St. Paul. And they're going to live really, next to each other for about 400 years. But Gnosticism is much more familiar. Like any Eastern individual who studies Eastern mysticism is going to really have a deep connection with Gnosticism right off the bat, because that's really kind of what it's more mirroring and more of that mystic Hebrew, right? So there was Hebrew Gnostics in Jerusalem waiting the birth of the Christ. So there was Gnostics before the birth of the Christ. Okay, so that's how deep this information goes. So this is in a complete variance to the Catholicism, where just this prophet came out of nowhere. He's the sole and only prophet. This is Jesus Christ. Gnosticism is it's a long change of kind of prophets. Now they do see Jesus and his mother Mary plays a huge role, and also kind of his life affairs after that play a huge role in it. But he is more of just the ultimate, almost like, I don't want to say a magician, but the ultimate adept. He just goes and gets trained everywhere and everything. So there's kind of this rich spiritual aspect. So the Gnostics really kind of show Jesus as he shows the way to can have this firsthand knowledge of the Supreme. Okay. And to be able to connect with that. Right. And they're very, very powerful organization. To this day, there's some very powerful Gnostic groups, but they're really going to, when we kind of come back to this creation story, when we were talking about the void, I think they do the best explaining that void of that, what we would call the Sophia energy. And we'll really kind of touch back in with what Sophia represents. But Sophia really representing the real, and then Saturn is going to almost represent the Maya. Okay, so one of the aspects that whole trouble of overcoming the illusion that we really don't see in Catholicism makes itself very prevalent in Gnosticism. And it's all about getting past what you call the archons. And those are actually the energy that lives above this realm and kind of rules this realm. And the whole aspect of Gnosticism is actually to make yourself in that golden white coat. So when you do pass on, and you're passing the layers of life that come above this, or the hierarchies of existence, the archons can't see you because you're pure. Right. So you can actually get back to Eden, where they see it as like, if you aren't pure, the archons just recycle your soul and kind of like reutilize that energy. So it's a really deep spiritual aspect. It's my favorite kind of art comes from Gnostic Christianity. I mean, I can't say that because I love all religious art, but that's definitely one of my favorites. But yeah, it's just a really, really beautiful thing, and we'll get really deep into it. So we're kind of approaching this Bible from this King James version as, again, like a principal foundation. So when we do approach Gnosticism, we can kind of give it a a really good
Just a proper
examination.
Yeah.
Give it the respect it deserves,
Right.
Because it is such an amazing aspect for any esoteric student. And again, guys, I know we're studying the Bible, but we're looking at the Bible because there's been so much good work done on the Vedas in the last 20 years. There's been so many good work, there's been so much other good work done on Buddhism with esoteric studies. So, and there's been so much good work done on the Bible, but we're just kind of wanting to like give it a refresh in the whole like Twilight of the Kali Yuga coming live about the Bible. You know what I mean? So, but all of these spiritual texts are just so, so important. So again, whatever one resonates with you. But this is just such a great, it's just almost just a great conversation piece to connect with all religions from King James
Absolutely.
Bible, because it's such an easy one for anybody to read.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that, we talked about this before the starting to record and where we left off with Genesis, but as we go on with the 7 days of creation, we'll also break down each of those, the 7 being, if you want me to read them off, we have light, and then we have the atmosphere, and then, the dry ground and the plants, and then, the sun, the moon, the stars. And then we have, the birds and all the underwater creatures, and then you have the land and the humans, and then the Sabbath. And so instead of blowing through them like I just did 1 through 7, I like that we're going right now, starting with that light. Mm-hmm. And so to keep everybody in track, including myself, this first verse from 1 through 3, I know that we're going to probably pick up for the next coming weeks, when God said, "Let there be light."
Right.
And there was light, and God saw the light and said it was good, right? And we stopped right there. So I'm excited for the next few verses, because I feel like everything you've mentioned and what we've talked about in these last few moments regarding this creation story is what's to come next, but what has also already been covered, and sort of interlace it all together, which is why we're like you said, we're doing the Bible right now. It's like many creation stories already been sort of revised, and the meanings behind them have been applied to a lot of different individuals who have taken that approach, like within the Vedas and everything else you're saying. So I'm excited to keep unfolding this with the Bible, because I didn't think we'd ever take these turns down these amazing little alleyways.
Right. Yeah. Too, like, man, and like as you were just reading that back and you said the words God said, and like right there, God said, we could have, that's so powerful, because now we're talking about that primal voice and the first vibration and all these other aspects, because we have the light waves and now we have the sound waves, and then the aspect of actually looking at something and giving appreciation and evaluating it from good to bad. So even that is so vital. And where we're gonna just so people are like, oh, we kind of left off on that, we'll kind of speak about that early vibration, because we're kind of looking at the light wave right now. We'll talk about the vibration when we get to the book of John, because the book of John goes into a little bit more detail on the word. And the word is going to be what we're really going to be breaking down there. And that's going to be a great little output. So we'll do John very soon after we kind of finish up Genesis, just because there are 2 great creation stories to study side by side. But just there's so much there. You know what I mean? There's in one line, there's just so much information, and we could type it in on DuckDuckGo right now, and it would give us, we could pull up 12 different articles and blow our minds on something. And this could be just like somebody writing in their keyboard like in 1996 on like an old school website that you find, and you're just like, this guy's blowing my monkey balls from my brains right now. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just such an endless subject. So I'm glad that I kind of feel like we got a little bit more grounded today, which was really good. But again, this is such a unique topic that there's gonna be some variance, and how do you point down and how do you hold down the creation of everything?
Right.
Because there's no words for that. So you're just always just like touching around the subject. Yeah. Right? It's the elephant in the room you can't touch. but it's right there and you just want to, but you can't figure out how.
Yeah.
It's like trying to bite your own teeth, Alan Watts says. And I like that. You can't bite your own teeth. I think that's a good little thought process to think about.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, that was pretty much the last question I had in regards to how we're going to be continuously formulating the unfolding of Genesis within its verses. And so is there anything else you want to add for like what comes up next? I know that we kind of have been doing these bi-weekly episodes, but I don't know if next week we'll just continue right off where we just left off right now and move into.
Yeah, I think just to kind of get us standard, I think we should just, because we kind of spoke about the 7 days of, let's just kind of move into that because I like where you were going with that. And that's going to be an important one. And that's going to be kind of an extended one because not only going to look at the number 7, we're probably going to break down 1 through 12 really quickly.
Yeah.
And take a look at all those numbers and how they kind of interplay together. So yeah, let's shoot for the 7 days of creation next. And then from there, we'll go from there.
From there, man. Awesome, man. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you to all our Patreon members.
Always lots of love.
I'm trying to answer. Daniel's trying to answer. Again, we're both busy people, but we're getting so much more in my opinion. I can't speak for Daniel, but I feel like we're getting so much more comfortable in the roles that we play here as students of the occult and as people who want to discuss more about these topics that many of you are very well versed in, and some of you are just starting your journey here. And there's no right and wrong, in my opinion, because, well, I shouldn't say it like that, but I should say for your questions that you might have for us, there's no right and wrong. Is that, I want to learn as much as you want to learn. So I appreciate when people message us and they feel that they're being vulnerable, they're sharing an instant in their life where they feel like, oh, I stumbled upon you guys based on, my experience with, such story that they might bring up. And I really appreciate that because it shows all the humility that's out there and the willing to learn and how to navigate, just as much as I wanted to learn how to navigate through all of this. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, especially in the time we find ourselves in, we need a buddy system.
We do need a buddy system.
So a spiritual buddy system,
buddy.
So Romy was like, what? So yeah, man, I think I love to end that this way. I'm excited to see where this Genesis conversation comes. And, we've got some exciting episodes. I know we're going to be breaking down the Lord of the Rings. And one thing I would love to announce for the listeners, and I don't think Eduardo even knows about this yet, but, Akira the Don, the individual that has done some intros for us, has done a complete audio book with like beats attached to the first book of Dune. And now I don't know if anybody has experience with this story. This is a very, very heavy esoteric story that's actually being made into a major motion picture that's going to come out like next month. Big shout out to David Lynch, who did the original Dune, even though he hates
David
it.
Lynch, I know he did not like that, but
they did try to shove all 3 books into one, and these are huge books. So we are going to, right at the tail end of that, I think Eddie and Ari are going to try to do a breakdown of Dune.
That'd be great.
So we're going to kind of tie that in for when the movie's coming out. And then we'll, so that'll be something to be on the lookout for. The Lord of the Rings. And then we've got some cool programs. I was at the beach all last weekend. And so I couldn't even find my computer. I don't even know where it was. But for the Patreon account, we will be working on progressing through the houses, and looking at the 1st through 12 houses, and that part for the spiritual development, which is super fascinating. The signs are amazing, the angles are amazing, everything about astrology is amazing. But when you really start breaking down the houses and what it means to the spiritual development of the individual, it's get your popcorn ready, entertaining stuff.
Absolutely, right? Man. And then we got to find a hotline to get a hold of you so people can start doing
so funny. I would be so much better with a home phone too, like a rotary home phone that rang.
Absolutely.
I would be picking that thing up all the time, but like telling me to carry around this cancer phone and stuff like that, like I'm going to throw it in the back of my car and try not to find it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
People will say that to me. Where are you when your phone? I'm like, I don't know where my phone is. I purposely lose it.
Right.
Man, we should get some rotary phones.
I would love a rotary phone. I'm all about that.
Cool, man. Well, with that being said, until next time then.
Until next time.
Excellent.